Why would Washington care so much about a company that makes dancing robot dogs? Because this is not about cute machines on stage. It is about embodied AI, the next trillion-dollar battlefield where software meets steel. The US has already gone after Huawei. Now robotics may be next. The big question is simple. Will sanctions crush China's humanoid ambitions, or will they turn into the best free advertising Chinese tech ever received? Let's break it down. In February 2026, Washington made a move that felt less like a trade decision and more like a geopolitical signal flare. The U.S. Department of Defense added Hangzhou-based Unitree Robotics to a Pentagon list that effectively shut the company out of American capital and government procurement. Within hours, the list was pulled down. Then it quietly reappeared the next day. That awkward back and forth said a lot. That was not some routine bureaucratic update. That was the U.S. national security machine aiming directly at a Chinese robotics company that most ordinary Americans had probably never heard of. Once again, let us answer the question, so why would the Pentagon care so much about a company that makes robot dogs? Because humanoid robots and embodied AI are no longer just cool tech demos, they are becoming strategic assets. And in the emerging tech competition between the United States and China, embodied intelligence might be the next big battlefield. Let's zoom out first. The US and China are already locked in a tech rivalry that covers semiconductors, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, electric vehicles, drones, and 5G. Washington has imposed sweeping chip export controls targeting advanced AI processors from companies like NVIDIA and AMD. It has sanctioned Chinese firms such as Huawei and restricted access to high-end lithography machines from Dutch giant ASML. The logic is clear: slow down China's technological progress, which could shift the global balance of power. Now robotics, especially humanoid and quadruped robots, is moving into that same category. Unitree Robotics, based in Hangzhou, is best known for its four-legged robot dogs. If you watched major Chinese events like the Spring Festival Gala or international sports events hosted in China, you may have seen these machines dancing, carrying equipment, or acting as guide dogs. But beyond the spectacle, Unitree built something strategically important. It became one of the first companies in the world to mass-produce and openly sell high-performance quadruped robots at relatively low prices. In a global market where competitors often charge tens of thousands of dollars for a single machine, Unitree dramatically lowered prices. Some of its entry-level models cost a fraction of what American rivals charge. Compare that with Boston Dynamics, the U.S. robotics company famous for its Spot robot dog. Spot is technologically impressive, used in industrial inspections and research, but it comes with a price tag that can exceed $70,000 depending on configuration. That price alone limits widespread adoption. Unitree's strategy was different. Lower cost, high performance, scale manufacturing. In some segments of the quadruped robot market, Chinese companies collectively account for a majority of global shipments, and Unitree is often mentioned as a leading player. And here is where geopolitics kicks in. Robots that can navigate complex terrain, carry loads, and operate autonomously have obvious civilian uses. Industrial inspection, disaster response, logistics, agriculture. But they also have clear military potential. Surveillance, reconnaissance, explosive disposal, supply transport in dangerous zones. Any technology that blends mobility, sensors, and AI can easily be labeled dual use. That dual-use label is exactly what Washington has been using to justify expanding restrictions. From the American perspective, the logic goes something like this. If embodied AI becomes a core platform technology for the next generation of military systems, then allowing Chinese firms to dominate the commercial market could indirectly strengthen China's defense capabilities. In the same way that advanced chips are viewed as the brain of modern weapons, advanced robots could become the body. The Pentagon list is not really about robot dogs performing at festivals. It is about preventing a scenario in which Chinese robotics firms gain global scale, data, and influence. Now let's talk about the bigger strategic picture. The United States has its own ambitions in humanoid robotics. Companies like Tesla are developing general-purpose humanoid robots such as Optimus, aiming to deploy them in factories and eventually households. Startups like Figure AI have attracted significant investment and partnerships with major tech players. Boston Dynamics continues to refine both quadruped and humanoid systems. American universities and defense contractors are deeply involved in robotics research funded by DARPA and other agencies. Washington's broader strategy has 3 layers. First, restrict China's access to critical components. That has already happened in semiconductors. Advanced GPUs used to train large AI models are tightly controlled. If humanoid robots rely heavily on cutting-edge AI chips, then chip export controls indirectly affect robotics, too. Second, block Chinese firms from accessing U.S. capital markets and government contracts. Being placed on a Pentagon list can scare off investors, especially American funds that must comply with national security rules. It also signals to allies that cooperation may carry political risk. Third, rally allies to adopt similar restrictions. Just as the U.S. persuaded Japan and the Netherlands to limit exports of advanced semiconductor equipment to China, it may seek to align partners on robotics standards, security reviews, and procurement bans. But here is the twist. In the past, sanctions have not always worked as intended. Take Huawei. When the U.S. government placed Huawei on the entity list and restricted its access to advanced chips and Google services, many analysts predicted the company would collapse. Its smartphone business did suffer significantly. Yet Huawei did not disappear. Instead, it pivoted aggressively into enterprise services, cloud, and its own operating system, Harmony OS. In 2023 and 2024, Huawei surprised many by releasing new smartphones powered by domestically developed chips, signaling progress in China's semiconductor ecosystem. Or consider DJI, the Chinese drone giant. Despite scrutiny and restrictions in the United States, DJI remains the dominant player in the global consumer drone market. Sanctions did not erase its technological edge or its cost advantage. So the question now is whether Unitree and other Chinese robotics firms will follow a similar path. Let's look at supply chains. One reason Washington's chip controls have bite is that advanced semiconductor manufacturing is highly concentrated. A single company, ASML in the Netherlands, produces extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. American firms dominate high-end AI chips. That concentration creates leverage. Robotics is more complex and more diffuse. A robot integrates motors, reducers, sensors, batteries, control boards, and AI software. China has spent decades building dense manufacturing ecosystems in cities such as Shenzhen, Ningbo, Suzhou, and Hangzhou. If a reducer supplier cuts off a robotics firm, another local supplier may step in. If a battery maker hesitates, a domestic alternative can ramp up production. In recent years, China has also made major advances in electric motors, power electronics, and lithium battery production, driven by its electric vehicle industry. Companies like BYD have built massive scale in batteries and drive systems. That industrial base spills over into robotics. If Unitree designs its own motors, controllers, and algorithms, and sources most components domestically, then traditional export controls have limited leverage. For Washington, that creates frustration. You cannot easily choke off a largely self-contained supply chain. What about capital? Losing access to American venture capital is not trivial. U.S. funds bring not just money but global networks and brand credibility. However, China has deep pools of domestic capital, including state-backed funds eager to support strategic technologies. When firms are sanctioned, they often receive stronger domestic backing as a matter of national pride and policy priority. And that leads to another geopolitical dynamic: sanctions as free advertising. When the U.S. government singles out a Chinese company as a national security concern, it sends a message to the world that this company matters to some buyers in emerging markets, which can enhance the company's reputation. If Washington is worried, then maybe the technology is advanced. China's Belt and Road Initiative has already built infrastructure networks across many of these regions. Adding robotics solutions to that ecosystem would be a logical next step. We saw a version of this with Huawei. In parts of the global south, U.S. sanctions were interpreted less as a warning and more as evidence of American fear of competition. Huawei positioned itself as a champion of affordable infrastructure for developing countries. Could the same happen with Chinese robotics? Imagine governments in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America seeking cost-effective robotic solutions for infrastructure inspection, mining, oil and gas, or public safety. If American products are expensive and come with political strings attached, and Chinese products are cheaper and widely available, the choice becomes pragmatic. Now let's talk about humanoid robots specifically. Quadruped robots are impressive, but humanoid robots are the real long-term prize. A humanoid machine that can walk, use tools, and operate in environments designed for humans could transform manufacturing, elder care, logistics, and even construction. Analysts project that embodied AI and humanoid robotics could become a multi-trillion-dollar market over the next decade or two. Both the US and China see this as a strategic industry. China's government has issued policy documents promoting the development of humanoid robots and embodied intelligence, aiming for mass production and global competitiveness. Tech hubs like Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Hangzhou are nurturing startups working on bipedal robots, dexterous hands, and AI control systems. Meanwhile, American firms are racing to combine large language models with physical robots. The idea is to give robots not just movement but reasoning abilities powered by advanced AI models. If a robot can understand natural language instructions and adapt to new tasks, its commercial value skyrockets. This convergence of AI and robotics is why Washington is nervous. The same AI models used for chatbots can be embedded into physical machines. And if China achieves scale in both AI and hardware manufacturing, it could create an ecosystem that rivals or surpasses that of the United States. So will companies like Unitree survive and thrive? History suggests that pressure can accelerate self-reliance. When Huawei lost access to certain U.S. components, it doubled down on domestic R&D. When Chinese EV makers faced skepticism abroad, they focused on improving quality and lowering costs until they became globally competitive. But survival is not automatic. Robotics is capital-intensive. It requires continuous software updates, hardware iteration, and ecosystem building. If sanctions scare off too many international partners, growth could slow. If advanced AI chips remain restricted, training cutting-edge embodied intelligence models could become harder. On the other hand, China is investing heavily in domestic AI chips. Companies like Huawei and others are developing alternatives to NVIDIA GPUs. While they may lag at the very high end, they could be sufficient for many robotics applications, especially as algorithms become more efficient. There is also the domestic market factor. China has a massive manufacturing base, an aging population, and rising labor costs. Humanoid robots could be deployed in factories to maintain productivity. Quadruped robots could inspect power lines, tunnels, and industrial facilities across a vast country. Even if overseas markets become more complicated, the domestic market alone could sustain significant growth. For the United States, the strategy is a balancing act. On one hand, Washington wants to protect national security and maintain technological leadership. On the other hand, overusing sanctions risks fragmenting global supply chains and pushing China toward greater technological independence. If every emerging Chinese tech firm is preemptively labeled a security threat, the result may be two parallel technology ecosystems. One led by the US and its allies. Another centered around China and much of the developing world. In that scenario, sanctions function as free advertising within half of the world. The deeper question is whether containment works in a field like robotics, where innovation is distributed and hardware manufacturing is deeply rooted in Asia. Unlike nuclear technology or advanced lithography, robotics components are not controlled by a single choke point company. Sensors can be sourced from multiple countries. Motors can be built domestically. Software talent exists in both the US and China. What really matters is integration. Who can combine AI, hardware, manufacturing scale, and real-world deployment data fastest? American firms have strengths in cutting-edge AI research, venture capital, and high-end chips. Chinese firms have strengths in rapid prototyping, cost control, and mass manufacturing. The race in humanoid robots will likely be decided not by a single breakthrough, but by who can iterate faster at scale. In that sense, placing a company like Unitree on a Pentagon list may slow certain international deals, but it does not change the fundamental dynamics of competition. And sometimes, it reinforces the narrative in China that technological self-sufficiency is a matter of national survival. That narrative unlocks policy support, financing, and talent. So will US sanctions crush Chinese robotics? Probably not. Will they complicate global expansion? Almost certainly. Will they turn into an unintended marketing campaign in parts of the world skeptical of American dominance? Possibly. The real story is not about one company or one list. It is about the next phase of the US-China tech rivalry, moving from chips and smartphones into machines that can walk, lift, and interact with the physical world. Humanoid robots are no longer science fiction props. They are emerging economic actors. And when economic actors gain strategic value, geopolitics follows. The Pentagon list was a signal. It said that in Washington's eyes, embodied intelligence is now strategic terrain. The response from Chinese companies will likely be the same pattern we have seen before. Accelerate domestic innovation. Strengthen local supply chains. Expand into markets less aligned with US policy, frame sanctions as proof of competitiveness. Whether that leads to a Huawei-style comeback story or a prolonged struggle depends on execution, technology, and global demand. But one thing is clear. The battle over humanoid robots is not just about who builds better machines. It is about who sets the rules, who controls the ecosystems, and who shapes the future of work and warfare. And that battle is just getting started.